The rain fell in heavy sheets across the city, washing the grime from sidewalks into gutters already overflowing with murky water. Sophia huddled deeper into the doorway behind Ronaldo's Italian restaurant, her thin jacket doing little to shield her from the cold. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to quiet the painful growling of her empty stomach. 10 years ago, she would have laughed if someone told her she'd end up here, hungry, homeless, and hiding from the rain in an alley that smelled of yesterday's garbage. Back then, she had been Sophia Petrov, the rising star of classical piano, daughter of the legendary Viktor Petrov, whose recordings filled concert halls worldwide. Sophia looked down at her hands, still her best feature despite everything else she'd lost. Long fingers, strong and nimble even after years of neglect. These hands had once played Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu to a standing ovation at Carnegie Hall when she was just 16. Now they were stained with dirt, the nails broken and uneven, but the muscle memory remained. Sometimes at night she would tap her fingers against her thigh, playing ghost concerts to help herself fall asleep. The back door of the restaurant swung open suddenly, startling her. A young kitchen worker stepped out, garbage bag in hand. He jumped when he saw Sophia. "Geez, lady, you scared me," he said, tossing the bag into the dumpster. He couldn't have been more than 20, with a round face still spotted with acne. His name tag read Denny. "Sorry," Sophia mumbled, pulling herself tighter into the corner of the doorway. She knew she should move, but the overhang was the only dry spot in the alley. Denny hesitated, looking at her with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "You can't stay here. Boss sees you, he'll call the cops." "Just until the rain stops," Sophia said, her voice scratchy from disuse. "Please." As Denny stood there uncertain, the rich smell of garlic and tomato sauce wafted from the open door. Sophia's stomach cramped painfully, a reminder that she hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. The last of her money had gone to a night in a cheap motel 3 days ago, a rare luxury to escape the persistent spring rains. Something shifted in Sophia's mind then. A flash of her old self, the part that hadn't been broken by the accident, the addiction, the fall from grace. The part that still remembered what it felt like to be whole. "Wait!" she called as Denny turned to go back inside. "Does your restaurant have a piano?" Denny looked back, confused. "Yeah, we got one. Some guy plays it on weekends." Sophia slowly stood up, her joints stiff from sitting on the cold concrete. "What about tonight? Is anyone playing tonight?" "Nah, Frank only comes in Friday through Sunday." Denny tilted his head, curious now. "Why, you play or something?" Sophia nodded, straightening her spine the way her father had taught her. "Shoulders back, chin up, even when your world is crumbling." "I do, I can play." "In exchange for food." Denny laughed, the sound echoing off the wet brick walls. "Right, and I'm secretly a famous chef." He looked her up and down, taking in the dirty jeans, the worn-out sneakers, the tangled hair hanging limply around her face. "No offense, lady, but you don't exactly look like a pianist." Sophia felt a flicker of anger, an emotion she hadn't felt in months. It warmed her more than the doorway had. "I can play anything. Classical, jazz, pop, whatever your customers want to hear." Before Denny could respond, a sharp voice called from inside.
"Denny, break's over."
"Get back in here." "Coming, Paolo," Denny called back. He glanced at Sophia, then at the still open door. "Look, I gotta go." "Please," Sophia said, taking a step forward. "Just ask if I can audition. I haven't eaten in 2 days." The admission hurt her pride, but hunger had a way of stripping away pretenses. Denny sighed. "Wait here, but don't get your hopes up." He disappeared inside, leaving the door slightly ajar. Sophia could hear the clatter of dishes, the sizzle of food on grills, the rapid-fire Italian of the chef yelling orders. Her mouth watered involuntarily. Minutes stretched into what felt like an hour. The rain continued to fall, and Sophia began to think Denny had forgotten about her. Just as she was about to give up and seek shelter elsewhere, the door swung open again. This time, a middle-aged man with a scowl etched into his face stood in the doorway. His white chef's coat was splattered with red sauce, and his dark eyebrows formed a single line across his forehead. "You the piano player?" he asked gruffly. Sophia nodded, trying to look more confident than she felt. "Denny says you want to play for food." The man, Paolo, she presumed, looked skeptical. "We're not a soup kitchen." "I'm good," Sophia said simply. "Very good. Your customers will be happy," Paolo snorted. "You look like you've been living on the streets." Sophia didn't deny it. Judge me after you hear me play, not before. Something in her tone must have caught his attention because Paolo's scowl softened slightly. Fine, 5 minutes. If you're terrible, you're out. If you're decent, you get a plate of pasta. That's it. Relief flooded through Sophia as Paolo held the door open wider. She stepped into the warm kitchen, ignoring the stares from the staff as she followed Paolo through to the dining area. Ronaldo's was nicer than she'd expected. White tablecloths, candles and wine bottles, walls painted a warm terracotta. About half the tables were filled with early dinner customers. In the corner sat a baby grand piano, not a high-end model but well-maintained. That's Frank's piano, Paolo said. He's particular about who touches it. I'll be careful, Sophia promised. As she approached the piano, she became acutely aware of her appearance. Her clothes were still damp from the rain, her hair a mess. A well-dressed couple at a nearby table watched her with undisguised distaste. Sophia sat down on the bench, taking a moment to adjust its height. The familiar action steadied her. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. Home. This was home, no matter what else had changed. She began with Debussy's Clair de Lune, gentle and unobtrusive, perfect for a dinner setting. The first notes floated into the air, hesitant at first, then growing in confidence as muscle memory took over. Sophia closed her eyes, letting herself be carried by the music. When she opened them again after the final note faded, she noticed the hush that had fallen over the restaurant. Paolo stood nearby, arms crossed but eyes wide with surprise. From a table near the back, an older woman whispered loudly to her companion, "Is that on the playlist?" "It's lovely," Paolo cleared his throat. "Play something else," he said, his tone less harsh than before. Sophia nodded and transitioned smoothly into Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, adding her own flourishes to the jazzy sections. Her fingers danced across the keys with growing confidence, the years of training shining through despite everything. By the time she finished the piece, a small crowd of waitstaff had gathered near the kitchen door to listen. One of them, a young woman with curly hair, applauded softly. Paolo's expression had transformed completely. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked. Sophia shrugged, not ready to reveal her past. "I've had lessons." "Lessons," Paolo repeated with a short laugh. "Right. Well, you've earned your dinner." He turned to one of the waiters. "Alberto, get her the special and a glass of water." The waiter nodded and headed toward the kitchen. Paolo leaned in closer to Sophia, lowering his voice. "You can stay until closing. Play whatever you want, but keep it appropriate for dining." "Thank you," Sophia said, genuine gratitude in her voice. As Paolo walked away, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose. For the next few hours, she played everything from classical pieces to gentle interpretations of pop songs, taking occasional breaks to devour the best meal she'd had in months, creamy risotto with wild mushrooms. Served with warm, crusty bread, customers came and went, many of them leaving larger tips than usual. Some approached the piano between songs to make requests or compliment her playing. No one seemed to notice or care about her shabby appearance anymore, too captivated by the music flowing from her fingertips. By closing time, Sophia's hands ached pleasantly, a familiar feeling from her days of 8-hour practice sessions. As the last customers left, Paolo approached the piano again. "Not bad," he said, which Sophia suspected was high praise coming from him. "Frank's got competition." Sophia managed a small smile. "Thank you for the chance." "And the food." Paolo studied her for a moment. "You got somewhere to stay tonight?" The question caught her off guard. Sophia looked down at the keys, embarrassed. "I'll find somewhere." Paolo sighed heavily. "There's a storage room in the back. Got a cot for when we do inventory late. You can stay there tonight. Just tonight, understand? And you'll need to clean up. Bathroom's down the hall." Sophia blinked rapidly, fighting back unexpected tears. "Why are you helping me?" Paolo shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "My mother played piano. Not like you, but she loved it. She always said music feeds the soul." He cleared his throat. "Besides, it's still raining." As Paolo walked away, Sophia ran her fingers lightly over the piano keys one last time. One night with a roof over her head. One good meal. One chance to play again. Small victories, but after years of nothing but losses, they felt monumental. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Sophia went to sleep with a full stomach and the faintest whisper of hope. Sophia woke to the sound of metal pots banging together and voices shouting in Italian. For a moment she forgot where she was. The cot beneath her was lumpy but dry, and the small storage room smelled of flour and garlic. Better than the alley, she thought, as memories of the previous night flooded back. She sat up slowly, her back stiff from the thin mattress. Sunlight streamed through a tiny window near the ceiling, illuminating shelves stacked with canned tomatoes and bags of pasta. A digital clock on the wall read 9:47 a.m. A knock on the door startled her. "You awake in there?" It was Paolo's voice. "Yes," Sophia called, quickly running her fingers through her tangled hair. "I'll be out in a minute." "No rush," Paolo replied. "We don't open until 11. There's coffee in the kitchen if you want some." Sophia heard his footsteps retreating. She looked down at her rumpled clothes and sighed. After using the small bathroom Paolo had shown her last night, she'd washed her face and hands, but it had been weeks since she'd had a proper shower. She felt a pang of shame at her appearance, remembering how she used to spend hours getting ready for performances, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, designer gowns that cost more than most people's monthly rent. In the bathroom down the hall, Sophia did her best to freshen up. She splashed cold water on her face and used her finger as a toothbrush with a dab of hand soap. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her once vibrant brown eyes now seemed dull and sunken, her cheekbones too sharp beneath pale skin. Still, last night's decent meal and sleep had made a small difference. When Sophia entered the kitchen, the staff was busy with prep work. A young woman chopping vegetables glanced up and smiled hesitantly. "You're the piano player from last night," she said. "I'm Lucia. That was beautiful music." "Thanks," Sophia replied, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm Sophia." Paolo appeared from the walk-in refrigerator carrying a tray of chicken. "Ah, you're up. Coffee's there." He nodded toward a pot on a small table in the corner. "Help yourself." Sophia poured a cup, savoring the rich aroma. It had been months since she'd had decent coffee. "Thank you," she said to Paolo, "for everything. I'll get out of your way soon." Paolo set down the tray and wiped his hands on his apron. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." He gestured for her to follow him to a small office off the kitchen. Once inside, he closed the door and sat behind a cluttered desk. "So, here's the deal. Frank, our regular pianist, called this morning. He's got some family thing and can't make it in tonight or tomorrow." Paolo fixed her with a direct stare. "The customers liked you. You brought in good tips for the staff. I'm offering you the weekend gig." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "Really?" 3 sets each night with breaks in between. "I'll pay you $50 per night plus meals." He leaned back in his chair. "But you need to look presentable, no offense." "None taken," Sophia said quickly. "But I don't have any other clothes." Paolo rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "My daughter Bianca might have some things that would fit you. She's away at college but left stuff here." He seemed to debate with himself for a moment. "And you can use the apartment upstairs to clean up. It's empty right now, the tenant moved out last month." Sophia felt tears prickling behind her eyes. Why was this stranger being so kind to her? "I don't know what to say." "Say yes or no," Paolo replied gruffly. "I'm running a business, not a charity." "But good music is good for business." "Yes," Sophia said firmly. "Definitely yes." An hour later, Sophia stood in a small but clean apartment above the restaurant, wrapped in a towel after the longest, hottest shower she could remember. Paolo's daughter had left behind several outfits, and while they were a bit loose on Sophia's thin frame, they were clean and presentable: black pants, a simple blue blouse, even a pair of barely worn flats that almost fit. Looking more like her old self, Sophia made her way downstairs as the restaurant opened for lunch. Paolo nodded approvingly at her appearance but said nothing. He introduced her to Antonio, the owner, a thin man in his 70s who simply grunted and told her not to mess with Frank's settings on the piano. Throughout the lunch shift, Sophia helped where she could, folding napkins, filling water glasses, eager to earn her keep beyond just playing piano. The staff warmed to her gradually, especially after Lucia discovered that Sophia spoke fluent Italian, a language she'd learned during her touring days. "Where did you perform before?" Lucia asked as they folded napkins together. "You play too well to be just starting out." Sophia hesitated, not ready to share her past.
"Here and there.
Small venues mostly. Well, you're really good, Lucia said. Better than Frank, but don't tell him I said that. As evening approached, Sophia felt a flutter of nerves. Last night she'd played without much thought, desperate for food and shelter. Tonight felt different, like a real performance, her first in years. She found herself at the piano during a quiet moment, running through scales to warm up her fingers. "You look different," a voice said, startling her. It was Denny, the kitchen worker who had first found her in the alley. Sophia smiled slightly. "Amazing what a shower can do." Denny shuffled his feet. "Paolo says you're playing all weekend." "That's cool. Thanks to you," Sophia said, "for not just sending me away yesterday." Denny shrugged, embarrassed. "No big deal. I gotta get back to work." By 6 o'clock, the dining room was filling up. Sophia sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. Tonight she started with some light jazz standards, Autumn Leaves, Take 5, pieces that created a pleasant backdrop without demanding attention. As the evening progressed, she mixed in some classical pieces and gentle arrangements of popular songs. During her first break, Paolo handed her a plate of fettuccine alfredo. "Customers are asking about you," he said. "A couple want to know if you take requests." "Of course," Sophia replied, pleased. When she returned to the piano, a middle-aged couple approached with a request for La Vie en Rose. Sophia played it with such feeling that the wife dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Word spread quickly, and soon Sophia had a small stack of napkins with requested songs scribbled on them. Between her second and third sets, an elderly man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses approached the piano. There was something familiar about him that made Sophia uneasy. "Excuse me," he said in a cultured voice with a slight accent. "Your playing is exquisite. Where did you study?" Sophia's heart raced. This was dangerous territory. "Oh, just private lessons," she said vaguely. The man nodded, though he looked unconvinced. "Your technique reminds me of the Russian school. Very precise yet emotional." He extended his hand. "I'm Dr. Thomas Reynolds. I teach music at the City University." Sophia shook his hand reluctantly. "Nice to meet you." "I particularly enjoyed your Chopin," Dr. Reynolds continued. "The rubato in the middle section, very reminiscent of Victor Petrov's interpretation. Are you familiar with his recordings?" Sophia nearly choked on her water. "I've heard them," she managed to say. "I had the privilege of attending his daughter's debut at Carnegie Hall years ago," Dr. Reynolds said, watching Sophia's face carefully. "A remarkable talent. Sophia, I believe her name was, disappeared from the music scene after an accident. Such a tragedy." Sophia's hands trembled slightly. "Did he recognize her?" "I should get back to playing," she said, turning toward the piano. "Of course," Dr. Reynolds said with a small bow. "But if you're interested in teaching some private students, I could make recommendations. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted." He walked away before Sophia could respond, leaving his business card on the piano. By the time the restaurant closed at 11, Sophia was exhausted but exhilarated. Her fingers were sore in a way they hadn't been in years. A good soreness, the kind that came from hard work rather than hardship. Paolo counted out $50 in cash and handed it to her. "You did good," he said. "Same time tomorrow?" Sophia nodded, clutching the money. It wasn't much, but it was honestly earned. Can I stay in the apartment again tonight?" Paolo hesitated. "Antonio's thinking of renting it out by the week until he finds a permanent tenant. It's got a bed, basic furniture. Rent would be $200 a week, including utilities." Sophia looked down at the $50 in her hand. "I can't afford that yet." "Play through the weekend," Paolo said. "We'll figure something out. Maybe work some lunch shifts too. Help with serving when we're short-staffed. Between that and the piano, you could make enough." Hope, a feeling so foreign it was almost painful, bloomed in Sophia's chest. "I'd like that." Later, lying on the real bed in the small apartment, Sophia stared at the ceiling. Dr. Reynolds' business card sat on the nightstand, a link to a world she thought she'd left behind forever. She wasn't ready to step back into that life, not completely, but for the first time in years she allowed herself to think it might be possible. She fell asleep with her fingers still moving slightly, playing phantom melodies against the sheets, her mind filled with music instead of regrets. A week had passed since Sophia first played at Ronaldo's, and already the routine felt familiar. She'd settled into the small apartment above the restaurant, working lunch shifts as a server and playing piano every evening. The steady meals and real bed had begun to restore her health, and her hands were regaining their former strength and flexibility. Tonight, the restaurant buzzed with Friday energy. Sophia played a lively rendition of Fly Me to the Moon, watching customers tap their feet and nod along. She spotted Dr. Reynolds at his now regular corner table, sipping red wine and listening intently. He'd returned every night she played, always leaving a generous tip in his card, which now formed a small stack on her nightstand. During her break, Lucia rushed over, eyes bright with excitement. "Sophia, you need to see this." She thrust her phone into Sophia's hands. On the screen was Ronaldo's social media page with a video of Sophia playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata from the previous night. The caption read, "Our amazing pianist Sophia transforms Thursday nights. The hidden talent, live music." Paolo's nephew posted it last night, Lucia explained. "It already has over 3,000 views and so many comments." Sophia scrolled through the comments with growing alarm. "Incredible talent. Who is she? She plays like a pro. Reminds me of that young prodigy from years ago. What was her name? Is that Sofia Petrov? Looks different but plays the same." The last comment made her stomach lurch. "This needs to come down," she said, her voice tight with panic. Lucia's smile faded. "What, why? People love you." Sophia handed back the phone. "I'm not looking for attention. Please ask them to take it down. But Sophia, this is good for the restaurant. And for you." Lucia studied her face. "What are you afraid of?" Before Sophia could answer, Paolo called from the kitchen. "Lucia, order up." "We'll talk later," Lucia promised, hurrying away. Sophia returned to the piano with shaking hands. She'd been naive to think she could play publicly without being recognized. While most people had forgotten the teenage prodigy who disappeared from the classical music scene years ago, true music lovers would remember. Dr. Reynolds clearly suspected something. How long before others made the connection? As she began her next set, Sophia noticed a new customer entering the restaurant. A tall man in an expensive suit, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. Antonio greeted him warmly, leading him to a prime table near the piano. Something about the man's confident stride and the way others deferred to him suggested importance. Sophia kept her head down, focusing on the keys, but she could feel the man watching her. After finishing a Gershwin piece, she risked a glance in his direction. He was studying her openly now, a hint of a smile on his lips. When their eyes met, he raised his glass in a small toast. During her next break, as Sophia headed toward the kitchen, the man stepped into her path. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I wanted to compliment your playing. I'm Richard Harmon." The name hit Sophia like a physical blow. Richard Harmon, the recording executive who had signed her to his classical label when she was 14. The man who had dropped her contract after her accident, when painkillers and depression had made her unreliable. "Thank you," she managed to say, hoping he wouldn't recognize her. Her appearance had changed dramatically since those days. She was thinner now, her once glossy hair cut shorter, her face more angular. But Richard tilted his head, studying her more closely.
Have we met before?
"You seem familiar," Sophia shook her head. "I don't think so. I need to get back to work." She tried to step around him. "Wait," Richard said, placing a business card on the piano. "I'm always looking for new talent for my label. Your technique is remarkable. Almost reminds me of—" He stopped, his eyes widening slightly. "My God, Sophia? Sofia Petrov?" The restaurant noise seemed to fade as blood rushed in Sophia's ears. "You're mistaken," she said weakly. Richard leaned closer. "I'd know you're playing anywhere. What happened to you? Where have you been all these years?" Sophia felt cornered, exposed. "Please," she whispered. "I'm not that person anymore, Sophia." Dr. Reynolds had approached without her noticing. "I thought it might be you. I didn't want to presume, but you're playing, it's unmistakable." Paolo appeared at Sophia's side, sensing her distress. "Everything okay here?" "Fine," Sophia said quickly. "I just need some air." She pushed past them and hurried through the kitchen to the back alley, the same spot where she'd first asked for a chance to play for food. The night air was cool against her flushed face. She leaned against the brick wall, trying to steady her breathing. The door opened behind her, Sophia tensed, expecting Richard or Dr. Reynolds, but it was Lucia who stepped into the alley. "Hey," Lucia said softly. "You okay?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Not really." Lucia offered a cigarette, which Sophia declined. "So," Lucia said, lighting one for herself, "you're some kind of famous pianist." "I was," Sophia admitted. "A long time ago. And that's bad because—" Sophia slid down the wall until she was sitting on the ground. "It's complicated." Lucia sat beside her. "I've got time." The simple kindness broke something in Sophia. Words she'd held back for years came pouring out, about her father, the great Viktor Petrov, who had pushed her to become a prodigy, about the grueling practice sessions and worldwide tours that had stolen her childhood, about the car accident at 22 that had shattered her left wrist, about the addiction to painkillers that followed, about her father's rejection when scandal tarnished the Petrov name, about the long, lonely fall to rock bottom. "I lost everything," Sophia finished. "My career, my family, my home, my self-respect. I've been invisible for years, and now suddenly everyone's looking at me again, expecting things I can't give." Lucia was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother used to say that talent is a gift, but what you do with it is your choice." She stubbed out her cigarette. "Sounds to me like your father treated your talent like it belonged to him. Maybe now it can be yours again, on your terms." Sophia considered this. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "So take it slow," Lucia suggested. "But don't run away. You've built something here." She stood up, offering her hand. "Come on. People are waiting for you." Back inside, Sophia found Paolo arguing with Richard Harmon. "She works for me," Paolo was saying heatedly. "You can't just come in here and poach my pianist." "I'm not poaching anyone," Richard replied smoothly. "I'm offering an opportunity to an artist of exceptional talent. One who deserves better than playing background music in a restaurant, no offense." "Plenty taken," Paolo growled. Sophia cleared her throat. Both men turned to look at her. "I'd like to finish my set," she said quietly. "If that's okay." Paolo nodded, shooting Richard a triumphant look. "Of course." As Sophia sat at the piano again, she felt different, lighter somehow, despite the complications of being recognized. She began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of her father's favorite pieces. The familiar notes filled the restaurant, but this time Sophia wasn't hiding. She played with her eyes open, acknowledging the gift she'd been given and the pain that came with it. After closing, Richard approached her again. "Sophia, we should talk. Your father has been looking for you for years." Sophia stiffened. "I doubt that. He made it very clear I was dead to him." "People change," Richard said. "Losing you nearly destroyed him." "After your mother died, my mother died?" Sophia interrupted, the color draining from her face. Richard looked shocked. "You didn't know?" "About 3 years ago. Cancer." Sophia gripped the piano to steady herself. Her mother, the gentle balance to her father's stern perfectionism, gone, without even a chance to say goodbye. "I'm sorry," Richard said softly. "I assumed you knew." Sophia shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "We lost touch." "After everything, your father changed after her death," Richard continued. "He set up a foundation in your mother's name to help young musicians with addiction issues. He's been searching for you, Sophia. He wants to make amends." "I need time," Sophia whispered. "This is all too much," Richard nodded. "I understand. But please call him." He wrote a number on the back of his business card. "He's an old man now, full of regrets. Don't wait until it's too late." After everyone had left, Sophia sat alone at the piano, the card with her father's number burning a hole in her pocket. She played softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing when Sophia was small. The melody had always calmed her, even during her darkest days. Paolo appeared with 2 glasses of wine, setting one beside her. "So," he said, sitting on a nearby chair. "Sophia Petrov, huh? Should I be asking for your autograph?" Sophia managed a small smile. "Hardly. That part of my life is over, is it?" Paolo sipped his wine. "Looks to me like it just caught up with you." "I'm not ready to go back to that world," Sophia said. "I like it here." "I like who I am here," Paolo nodded thoughtfully. "The apartment's yours for as long as you want it, and there's always a place for you at the piano. But Sophia," he leaned forward, "don't hide your light because you're afraid of the shadows. Whatever happened before, it's part of your story, but it doesn't have to be the end." Sophia ran her fingers over the keys, not playing, just feeling their familiar shape beneath her touch. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "Nobody ever does," Paolo replied with a shrug. "That's the beauty of it." 3 days had passed since Richard Harmon had recognized Sophia, and the business card with her father's number remained untouched on her nightstand. Each time she reached for her phone, something held her back. Pride, fear, or maybe just the habit of survival without family that she'd developed over the years. The restaurant had been unusually busy since the video went viral. Word had spread about the mystery pianist, and customers were coming specifically to hear Sophia play. Paolo had even printed special menus with a piano night, special, featuring Sophia's favorite dishes to prepare. During her lunch shifts, a simple pasta with roasted garlic and olive oil that reminded her of meals her mother used to make. Tonight, Sophia wore a black dress Lucia had loaned her, nicer than her usual outfits, with a hint of elegance that nodded to her former life without fully embracing it. As she played a flowing medley of movie themes, she noticed Dr. Reynolds enter with an elderly man she didn't recognize. The stranger walked with a cane, his steps slow but purposeful. Something about his posture, the straight back, the chin held high despite his obvious frailty, stirred a memory in Sophia. When the old man sat down at Dr. Reynolds' usual table, his face caught the light and Sophia nearly stumbled over the keys. Though aged beyond what she remembered, the sharp cheekbones and intense blue eyes were unmistakable, features she saw in her own mirror daily. Her father had found her. Sophia's fingers froze mid-phrase, the music cutting off abruptly. Diners looked up in confusion. Paolo glanced over from the bar, his brow furrowed with concern. With a deep breath, Sophia forced herself to continue playing, switching to Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, her father's signature piece, the one he'd made famous with his recordings. It was a deliberate choice, almost a challenge. "See, I still remember. I can still play your music." She watched from the corner of her eye as her father closed his eyes, his hands resting on the cane propped between his knees. Was that a tear on his cheek or a trick of the light? Sophia played mechanically through her first set, barely aware of the music flowing from her fingers. When her break came, she hurried to the kitchen, passing Paolo without a word. "Sophia," Lucia followed her through the swinging doors. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "My father is here," Sophia whispered, leaning against the stainless steel counter. "Table 7 with Dr. Reynolds." Lucia peeked through the small window in the door. "The old guy with the fancy cane? That's Victor Petrov, the famous pianist?" Sophia nodded, her stomach churning. "I can't face him, Lucia. Not yet. Want me to tell them you're sick? Paolo would understand." Sophia considered this escape route, tempted by its simplicity, run away as she had been doing for years. But something inside her, perhaps the same spark that had given her courage to ask for a chance that rainy night, rebelled against the idea. "No," she said finally. "I need to do this, but not here, not with an audience." Lucia squeezed her shoulder. "Use Paolo's office. I'll bring him back." Before Sophia could object, Lucia had slipped back into the dining room. Through the window, Sophia watched her approach her father's table and leaned down to speak quietly. Dr. Reynolds nodded, but her father's face remained impassive, giving away nothing. Sophia retreated to Paolo's cluttered office, her heart hammering against her ribs. She paced the small space, rehearsing and discarding opening lines. "What do you say to a father who disowned you? Who declared you dead to him when you needed him most?" The door opened and Lucia ushered in Victor Petrov before discreetly withdrawing. The room suddenly felt too small for the weight of all that stood between them. Her father looked older than his 73 years. His once robust frame had thinned, his shoulders slightly stooped despite his attempts to stand tall. The hands that had created magic across piano keys for decades were gnarled with arthritis, blue veins prominent beneath paper-thin skin. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, to Sophia's shock, her father's stern face crumpled. "Sofichka," he said, his voice breaking on her childhood nickname, "my daughter." The familiar accent, thicker with emotion, transported Sophia back to their home in New York, to piano lessons that stretched late into the night, to rare moments of praise that she had lived for. "Why are you here?" Sophia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "To find you." He took a hesitant step forward. "To bring you home." Sophia crossed her arms protectively over her chest. I don't have a home. You made that very clear. Her father winced as though she had struck him. I was wrong, he said simply. So terribly wrong. It's been 6 years, Sophia said, anger finally breaking through her shock. 6 years since you told me I was no daughter of yours, that I had destroyed everything you built. Where were you when I was struggling to get clean? When I was sleeping on park benches because I couldn't afford rent? I looked for you, Victor insisted. After I came to my senses. After your mother got sick. He lowered himself carefully into Paolo's chair as though his legs could no longer support him. We hired private investigators, put up posters, called hospitals and shelters. You had vanished. I didn't want to be found, Sophia admitted. Especially not by you, Victor nodded, accepting this truth. I don't blame you. What I did, the things I said, they are unforgivable. He looked up at her, his eyes swimming with tears. But I ask for your forgiveness anyway, knowing I don't deserve it. Sophia turned away, unable to bear the sight of her proud father reduced to begging. She had imagined this moment countless times over the years, sometimes with screaming accusations, sometimes with cold dismissal, sometimes with tearful reconciliation. None of those scenarios had prepared her for the reality of her father's vulnerability. I was so angry with you, she said quietly. For years, that anger kept me going. It was easier than admitting how much I missed you and Mom. Your mother never gave up hope, Victor said. Even at the end, she believed we would find you. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. She wanted you to have this. Sophia took the pouch with trembling hands. Inside was her mother's wedding ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond that Victor had saved for years to buy when they were young immigrants with nothing but talent and dreams. She said it would find its way to you when you were ready, Victor explained. Perhaps she was right. Sophia closed her fist around the ring, the metal warm against her palm. Richard told me about the foundation. For musicians with addiction issues, Victor nodded. The Elena Petrov Foundation. Your mother's idea, though she didn't live to see it established. It has helped many young people. He paused. It would not exist if not for you, Sophia. Your struggle opened our eyes to a world we had ignored. Sophia sat on the edge of the desk, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing you don't wish to give, Victor said. Just to know you are well. To be part of your life again if you'll permit it. He gestured toward the restaurant beyond the office door. I heard you play tonight. You've lost nothing of your gift. If anything, your music has gained depth. There is pain in it now, but also understanding. Sophia had spent so many years running from her past that the idea of embracing it felt almost dangerous. I'm not the same person I was. Nor am I, Victor replied. We have both been humbled. A knock at the door interrupted them. Paolo poked his head in, looking apologetic. Sorry, Sophia, but customers are asking when you'll be back at the piano. A few more minutes? Sophia asked. Paolo nodded and withdrew. Sophia turned back to her father, who was watching her with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. You've built a life here, he observed. A small one, Sophia admitted, but it's mine. I earned it. I would not take it from you, Victor assured her. But perhaps we could build something new as well. Not as teacher and student or famous father and prodigy daughter. Just as family. Sophia thought about Lucia's words from days earlier, that her talent was her own now to use as she chose. Maybe the same could be true of her relationship with her father. Maybe they could create something new from the broken pieces of the past. I'm playing one more set tonight, she said finally. Would you like to stay and listen? As my guest? The relief and joy that washed over Victor's face made him look years younger. I would be honored. When Sophia returned to the piano, the restaurant fell silent as though the diners sensed something significant was happening. She adjusted the microphone that Paolo sometimes used for announcements. This next piece is for my father, she said simply, her voice carrying across the hushed room, who has traveled a long way to hear me play. She began with Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, the first piece she had ever mastered as a child, the foundation upon which her father had built her technique. As she played, Sophia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, note by note. This was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. From his table, Victor watched his daughter play, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. Dr. Reynolds offered him a handkerchief, which he accepted with a nod of thanks. Later, as the restaurant emptied and staff began cleaning up, Sophia found herself sitting with her father at the piano bench. His gnarled fingers hovered over the keys. "May I?" he asked hesitantly. Sophia nodded, shifting to make room. Victor placed his hands on the keyboard, wincing slightly with the movement. He began to play, slowly without his former technical brilliance, but with deep emotion, a Russian lullaby he had played for Sophia when she was small. After a few measures, Sophia joined in, their hands moving together across the keys, finding harmony despite the years of silence between them. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, a bridge across the chasm that had separated them for so long. And for the first time in years, Sophia allowed herself to hope that the music might lead her home. 6 months had passed since the night Viktor Petrov walked into Ronaldo's and found his daughter. The seasons had changed, summer heat giving way to autumn crispness, and with them, Sophia's life had transformed once again, not back to what it was before, but into something new, something better. Tonight was special. Ronaldo's was closed to regular customers, the tables rearranged to create a small performance space around the piano. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Private event, the Elena Petrov Foundation benefit concert." In the kitchen, Paolo supervised the preparation of elegant appetizers while Lucia arranged flowers on the tables. The staff moved with excited energy, glancing occasionally at the clock. Sophia stood in the small apartment above the restaurant, still her home, despite her father's offers to move her into his Manhattan penthouse. She preferred the independence of this place, the reminder of how far she had come on her own. Though she had accepted her father's help with medical treatments for her wrist and proper clothes, she paid her own rent with her earnings from the restaurant and from the small number of piano students she had begun teaching. She adjusted the simple black dress she'd chosen for tonight, purchased with her own money, a point of pride. Her hair, once again healthy and shining, was swept up in an elegant knot. Around her neck hung her mother's locket, a gift from her father that contained a tiny photo of the three of them in happier times. A knock at the door broke her reverie. "Sophia? They're starting to arrive," Lucia called. "I'll be right down," Sophia replied, taking one last look in the mirror. The woman who gazed back at her was neither the broken person who had begged for a chance in the rain, nor the polished prodigy of her youth. This Sophia carried elements of both, but had become someone entirely her own. Downstairs, the restaurant had been transformed. Candles flickered on tables covered with white cloths. A small stage had been set up around the piano, with a banner displaying the foundation's logo. Near the entrance, a table held brochures about addiction recovery programs for musicians and artists, along with a donation box already filling with checks. Dr. Reynolds greeted Sophia warmly as she descended the stairs. Over the past months, he had become a mentor again, helping her ease back into teaching without the pressure of performance that had once dominated her life. "Your students are all here," he said, gesturing to a group of young people gathered nervously near the bar, which tonight served only non-alcoholic beverages. "They've been practicing like mad for this." Sophia smiled at the 5 piano students she had taken on, ranging from a gifted 12-year-old to a retired accountant fulfilling a lifelong dream. They weren't the elite prodigies her father would have chosen for her to teach, but their passion and determination reminded Sophia daily why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Richard Harmon approached, champagne flute in hand. "Full house," he observed with satisfaction. "Every music journalist in the city is here, plus donors with deep pockets." He lowered his voice. "I've already collected enough pledges to fund the foundation's new scholarship program for a year." Sophia nodded, grateful but distracted. "Have you seen my father?" "In Antonio's office, I believe." "Last-minute nerves," Richard winked. "Like father, like daughter." Sophia made her way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who had once written her off as another tragic cautionary tale. The journey back from rock bottom had not been easy. There had been difficult conversations, painful therapy sessions, moments of doubt. But each step had strengthened her. Each challenge overcome had rebuilt her confidence. She found her father sitting quietly in Antonio's small office, his eyes closed in concentration. At 73, Viktor Petrov no longer performed regularly. his hands too stiff with arthritis for the technical demands of his former repertoire. But he had prepared a special piece for tonight, practicing for weeks despite the pain. "Papa?" Sophia said softly, using the Russian term of endearment that had recently returned to her vocabulary. Victor opened his eyes and smiled. "Ah, Sofichka. Is it time already?" "Almost." She sat beside him. "Nervous?" "At my age, everything is a bit nervous," he joked. Then more seriously, "I never thought I would play with you again. That night when I first heard you at the piano here. It was like hearing your mother's voice calling to me across time." Sophia took his hand, noting how their fingers, both pianist hands, long and expressive, intertwined perfectly despite their differences. His gnarled and weathered, hers, once again strong and capable. "She would be proud of us," Sophia said, "not for the music but for finding each other again." Victor nodded, emotion making it difficult for him to speak. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small envelope. "Before we go out there, I wanted to give you this." Sophia opened it to find a key. "What's this for?" "The house in Vermont," Victor explained. "The summer place where we used to go when you were small, before the touring schedules became too demanding. I've had it renovated. The piano room overlooks the lake, just as you always wanted." Sophia remembered the house. Peaceful days of practice with windows open to the breeze. Evenings of her parents playing duets while she fell asleep on the sofa, before competitions and recordings had taken over their lives. "It's yours," Victor continued. "A place to teach, to compose, to play, or not to play. Your choice always." Sophia felt tears threatening. "Thank you," she whispered. This was more than a gift of property. It was her father acknowledging her right to choose her own path. A knock at the door announced Paolo. "5 minutes," he said with an encouraging smile. Sophia and Victor made their way to the main room, where conversations hushed as they approached. The small crowd parted, creating a path to the piano. Sophia recognized faces from her past. Former teachers, colleagues, critics who had once declared her career over, mingled with her new family. The restaurant staff who had taken her in. Her students watching with admiration, Dr. Reynolds beaming proudly. Antonio, looking dignified in a suit that had probably last seen daylight at his daughter's wedding, stepped forward with a microphone. "Welcome," he said, his accent thicker than usual with emotion. "6 months ago, a young woman walked into my restaurant and asked to play piano in exchange for food." He glanced at Sophia with grandfatherly affection. "I almost said no. Think what I would have missed." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "Tonight," Antonio continued, "we celebrate second chances. The Elena Petrov Foundation has already helped 15 young musicians find treatment for addiction. Tonight's benefit will help many more." He raised his glass. "To music that heals." "To music that heals," the crowd echoed. As Sophia took her place at the piano, with her father settling beside her on the bench, she remembered that rainy night that seemed like a lifetime ago. Hungry, desperate, with nothing but her talent and determination. That night she had played for survival. Tonight she played for redemption, not just her own, but for anyone who had ever lost their way and fought to find it again. They began with the piece they had prepared, a duet arrangement of Rachmaninoff that Victor had adapted to work around his limitations and showcase Sophia's renewed technical brilliance. Despite his arthritis, Victor's musical intelligence shone through in every phrase, while Sophia's playing had gained an emotional depth that moved listeners to tears. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. But the most meaningful moment for Sophia came later, after her students had performed their pieces and the formal program had ended. As guests mingled and enjoyed Paolo's food, Denny, now promoted to assistant chef, approached the piano hesitantly. "Remember that first night?" he asked Sophia. "When you were sitting in the rain and I almost sent you away?" Sophia nodded, smiling at the memory. "I've been taking guitar lessons," Denny admitted. "Watching you, it made me think maybe I could learn too." "How's it going?" Sophia asked. "Hard," Denny laughed. "But good. Like really good." That was the moment Sophia realized the true value of her journey. Not the applause, not the reconciliation with her father, not even her own recovery, important as those things were. It was the simple fact that her story might inspire others to pursue their own dreams, to believe in second chances. Later that night, After the guests had gone and the restaurant staff was cleaning up, Sophia found herself alone at the piano. The apartment upstairs was packed. She would leave for Vermont in the morning to begin the next chapter of her life. Her father would visit on weekends, health permitting. Her students would come for intensive workshops. Lucia had already planned to drive up for Sophia's birthday. Sophia played softly, a melody she was composing about rain and hunger and unexpected kindness, about falling and rising, losing and finding, about a journey that began with "Can I play and swap for food?" and led to places she could never have imagined. Paolo paused in his closing routine, listening. "You'll come back and play for us sometimes?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Sophia smiled at the man who had given her a chance when she had nothing. "Every month," she promised. "After all, this is where the music came back to me." As Paolo nodded and continued with his tasks, Sophia played on, her fingers dancing across the keys that had once saved her life.